meeting. I want to recognize our good friend Bob Gastisha from New Mexico, who is signed in early in the morning here. And good old dependable Bob, that's what I call him. He's always there when I need him. He's a close friend and a very valued member of the team. So thank you for serving as another co-host this morning. Okay, I'd like to begin with my typical president's message, which is, what is the new norm? That's something that we're all going to have to figure out over time. We really do not know what the future holds, but one thing we can be sure of, we're probably going to be doing Zoom meetings for the foreseeable future. In Century Village, they have made it clear, at least to this point, that that's the way things are going to go until further notice. So I'm very grateful for all of you being here. You're all looking so healthy, virtually healthy as well. So it's wonderful to be able to have this opportunity to chat with you. You can see me in the living room here, see, just like a cozy living room. And that's why I call this Barry's DBCC living room today for the meeting. We hope that you're going to stick with us through the long term. We're going to do everything possible to present the best guest speakers and the most interesting topics throughout the remainder of this season. I'll be showing you a little later on what I'm going to do with the meetings, what we have scheduled over through right now, October completely. I want to wish everyone who celebrates the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, a very happy and sweet and healthy New Year. Our next class is going to be on the 25th of September, because you know that next Friday is the terrible 9/11, after which I have a terrible reminder the next day, which will be my 39th birthday. Congratulations. So obviously, we don't want to present anything like that on a day like that. And then, of course, the Rosh Hashanah holiday comes up next. And then we're going to have another great presentation from Arizona, by Rob Truman on all things Google. That's something you really also do not want to miss. In October, we have two presentations. Our good friend Bob Gastisha is going to do his Staying Safe and Secure. I guess is it an encore?
It's a combination of encore and updated information.
Okay. How's your cold?
It's still there.
Yep. Okay, well, hope you feel better, and thank you for joining us under the circumstances. I appreciate it very much. And then on the 23rd, we have John Kennedy doing an introduction to Linux, and that's something everybody should be considering as an alternate to Windows 7 or Windows 10. Listen to me speak. We're still using our Windows 7 desktop here, so I'm kind of hypocritical, but I know that we're going to have to switch over very shortly, and we intend to do so. So I would like to now, if there are no questions, if there are questions rather, you should please use the chat box, and we will be able to actually send you the transcript if you wish. It will be available at the end of the meeting, and you'll be able to see all the questions that were asked. So be patient, and things will move along very well. With that, I'd like to introduce today's guest speaker, who is extremely well known to all of us. She's our club's vice president for the past 3 years. She's been a member, and I saw greatness in her immediately when she joined. I saw someone that from the get-go was willing, able, and had a tremendous ability to bring her vast experience in educational technology to the fore. And she's been extremely helpful to me. And whether you know it or not, she's also served as our assistant webmaster, helping me with the websites. Her talents seem to be extremely well appreciated. And she's also very good with presentations at our club. She gave one on Canva that infected me immediately. Since then, I've been doing a lot of presentations with it. I highly recommend the program, and she's done others for us, which are already posted up on YouTube. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to present my right hand, Carol Freedman, who's going to present the Nitty Gritty on podcasts. So let's give her a virtual welcome.
Yay! Thank you,
Carol,
guys.
you may begin.
Thanks so much. That was very nice of you, Barry. I really appreciate that. So I'm doing this presentation because several times now there's been a request from the group to know something about podcasts. And I think it's kind of a nice, natural follow-on from the presentation that we had last week that Howie did, talking about audiobooks, because we're talking about another audio-based way of getting information and entertainment and other things. So this was quite an exploration for me. I've just recently, in the last 6 months or so, begun using several different podcasts, and I'll talk a little bit about that as I go. But I did quite a bit of research in order to prepare this presentation so that I had as broad a picture of podcasts as I could get. So I want to share some of the basics of that with you without hopefully boring you. But I particularly want to hear from you as we go along about your experience, about the things that you look for in terms of kinds of information you want, about the systems that you use in doing it, because each of you are resources for this also. So without further ado, here we go. So first of all, when we talk about podcasts, what are we talking about? And this is one definition, that a podcast is essentially a radio show, something that you can get on the internet or now via your phone. I mean, it's something that's going to come through Wi-Fi and internet connections so that you can listen anytime you want, or you can potentially download whatever you're listening to, which means that you're saving it on your phone, your tablet, or your computer, and you can listen to it anytime, even without an internet connection. So right away we know internet, no internet potentially, and various kinds of information. So supposedly podcasts have become some of the most beloved ways of entertainment and education the world over. They're on demand. They are specialized interest shows that have plenty of material that may not have made it onto a traditional radio broadcast, and that's what makes them great. So whether it's news, which is a biggie, talk format programs, how-to programs and presentations, serialized fiction, which is part of the bleed over from audiobooks, So this is a way of listening to shows and books, kind of like we used to in the old days of radio, when you'd hear mysteries that continued week to week. There's a resurgence of that sort of thing now. And as a result, there's something for everybody potentially. And Edison research says that one of the main reasons that podcasts have become so popular is that it lets us save time in what we're listening to. And they say that podcast listening locations, when they looked at them, that they found out that people most often listen to what they're calling audio blogs, which is another way of looking at podcasts, that they look at them at home. They listen to them at home, in the car, or while walking around or working out. That's just the shortcut version of how they get used. So if we think about how they've grown, this is one snapshot of some of the stats regarding them. So if you think back to 2006, so that's what, 14 years ago, only 22% of the adult population at that point was aware of podcasting. By this year, that figure's gone up to 75%, and it's becoming increasingly popular every month and every year. And in 2019, there was an estimated 88 million podcaster listeners in this country. That's a small fraction of what exists around the world. And the forecast is that in 2023, we may surpass 160 million. So lots and lots of folk. So where do we listen to these things? They say 50% of all podcasts, or of all homes, listen to podcasts, which is over 60 million homes. And they listen to them, 80% of the people listen to them at home. Over half listen to them in a car or truck. Little less than half walking around. And those are the most popular ways. A lot of people listen to them 3/4 or so when they're commuting, little over half when they're doing housework, little over half in their free time. And if you look at where they're listened to around the world, it's interesting to see that Korea, far outdistances the rest of the world as to how many people are listening. We're down here. So we're about a third of the residents in our country listen to a podcast or have listened to a podcast in the last month. Lots of room for growth. Here's a little bit more on some of the latest stats. So 75%, as you heard, of people are familiar with the term podcasting. 16 million people are avid podcast fans. 50% of all the US homes, as we saw, are podcast fans, and over 155 million of the people in this country have listened to a podcast. Over 104 million listened to a podcast in the last month. 24% listen to podcasts weekly. And we'll see in a minute why there's good reason as to how people listen. And then if you look at the demographics, a little over half are male. Little bit more are white, and then you can see the households that it tends to be a higher income group of people who listen to podcasts, and you can see something about their education. This is one of the things that I think is most interesting, is the age. So if you notice, in the 12 to 34 group of young listeners, 48% of the population listen versus the 37% of the population made up of that age range. So a disproportionate number of people in the, young kids or youth are listening. When you get a little into the mid-range, you can see it goes up slightly. And then for us, 55 plus, it's just a little more than 20%. So again, lots of room for growth, and it is a big growth area. And I just want to say a little more about the listening behavior, and then we're actually going to talk some about how to choose them and the kinds of things out there. And I'm going to want to hear a little bit from you too. So typically, podcast listeners subscribe to an average of 6 shows in the last week. And they subscribe to an average of 7 different shows per week. More than 3/4 listen to all or most of each episode. And what we're finding is that listening on computers is going up slightly, and listening on smartphones, which is the major way, went down slightly in the last year. This is a big deal. 19% of listeners increase the speed that they listen. And I'm going to show you when we talk about criteria and features, that's one of the new features that's a big deal. Since you can listen fairly quickly, and often you can listen more quickly than people talk, can you speed it up some? And can you control what you're actually hearing in terms of silence and spaces in a presentation? And this is where you can see part of the growth. 65% of the people who listen monthly have been listening for less than 3 years. That's certainly me. And surprisingly enough, comedy is actually the most popular podcast genre, followed by education and news. So I'm going to stop for a second. I'm curious to see who among you listens to 3 or more shows in a week, podcasts. Anybody? Oh, you have to unmute yourself to say something. How many of you listen to any podcasts?
Yeah, I listen to a whole regimen on Alexis every morning. There's what's called flash briefings, and we've got a whole list of podcasts that we just say play the flash briefings, and it goes through all the podcasts in the morning during breakfast.
Cool. Who else? I saw Bob's hand go up. Can't hear you, Bob.
I have my own podcast. I posted it in the chat.
Yeah, so he's on the other side of the mic. He's one of the many people putting information out there. Anybody else?
Yeah, I listen to NPR News.
Aha.
And the Daily News. They had a great one this morning about opening up the theaters again.
Yeah, NPR is what really got me started. I started looking for On Being and Freakonomics and several other shows. And so I'll talk in a minute about ways that we can actually find podcasts. Who else listens?
Here, Irving here. I'm listening to CBC podcasts, and my favorite is one called Ideas.
Huh.
Try to listen as often as possible.
Cool. All right. So let's move on a little bit and we'll get some more feedback from you. So as you might imagine, one of the things that has made the biggest difference to people's consuming podcasts has been the use of the smartphone. So, whether people are using their phone at home or they're using it, when they're out and about, that's become a very big way. So it's 157% increase since 2014, huge, with computers coming second, tablets third, and then other devices. And these are some of the things that people tend to listen to most. You can see, so this is weekly podcasts, and you can see comedy heads the list, and then you can see news and society and culture and sports and crime. So, I don't know whether any of you are surprised by some of these topics, but I think it's interesting to see. There are podcasts in each of these areas: arts, business, religion, TV and film. And, and then when you come over here, these drop into single digits, but there's still a lot of people who are listening in these areas, and the listenership is growing all the time. So how do you find them? Where do we get them? And we can get them in a variety of ways. So we can get them from a website of somebody that we know we want to listen to. I've started listening to Rachel Maddow, and I had missed a couple of her shows, so I went looking to see if she had a podcast, and sure enough she did, which gave me quicker access and access to more things just off of her website. You could go to the NPR website and pick up things. You could go to CNN. You could go to Trevor Noah, to anyone's particular website using your browser off of the internet. One of the other big ways to listen to them and find them and get interested in them is off of a radio or TV station. And so a couple of the things that I mentioned were radio stations. When we look at TV stations, this is the way that podcasts really began their popularity. And, there's, again, good reason as to why that's the case. And it's a captive audience, so people are, getting introduced. And if they hear a presentation that they like, they go, oh, I want to listen to that again, or I wasn't listening live when that was playing. I want to hear what I missed. So that's one way. Another way is from a podcast player, and that's part of what we're going to look at in a minute to see the different kinds of players that exist and what makes them different and what makes some better than others. Or you can find out about them and get access to them from social media. So you may see people post about them. You may see the people whose podcasts there are do sponsored posts that that give you access. You can actually access them from Instagram, from Pinterest, or from Twitter. Does anybody access them off of social media? Has anybody been doing that? I've accessed some of them off of Facebook. I don't use Instagram or Pinterest or Twitter. So nobody's using them that way. Okay. And then if there's something that you particularly are interested in, how do you find out where it is? Well, one of the first things you can do is you can do a Google search for either the person or the topic or the show and do it by name, and it will show you what it is and how to access it. You can search the podcast player that you are using for a particular show name or a topic, and I'm going to show you examples of that shortly. You can browse topics on those players for things that interest you. And you can browse player suggestions, so just like when you're on Netflix and you're watching something, then oftentimes if you go back to your listing again, or you go down below the show you're watching, you will see suggestions of other things you might like to see. That's becoming more and more popular, and it's partly what some podcasters refer to and people in media refer to as curated suggestions. So it means some person's actually watched you, or they've gathered stats on your viewing, and now they're making suggestions to you of other things like what you've just seen. Many people like this, lots of people hate it. So in terms of what's the best out there, or what's tops, there are different ways of determining that. And so here's a listing of the top 10, and it's, this is one cut. When I was actually researching, I found a couple of others, and I'll show you one other. So there's a lot of variability about this. But part of what's interesting is that with this particular set of stats, they're looking at two things. They're looking at, are you using, how many different unique devices are you using to view using these particular players, and how many specific unique downloads, so how many programs are you taking, and how many episodes. So they get some idea of, first of all, what's, where are there the most phones, where are there the most connections through iTunes or Apple Podcast or Amazon Fire, so various things like that. And then what are the specific things that you're actually downloading? And so if you notice, interestingly enough, Apple Podcasts heads the list and significantly outperforms all of the others. Any idea why that is? Who has a guess? And Barry, you don't get to say anything on this one. Anybody have a guess why Apple Podcasts are the leaders?
Mainly because of the Apple products that are out there, like your iPhones and the iPads, etc., which hook up directly to that process.
That's part of it. So there's tons of devices out there. That's the first thing. Any other ideas? Where do you think the term podcast comes from?
Gee, might that be an Apple Pod?
Might that be an Apple iPod? That's where. So guess who got the lead in the game? Plus, they've made it really, really easy. So you've got an Apple device. In a minute, we'll see how they actually put, an app, which is one of the ways you access that. They put an app right on the phone, easy to find, easy to get to. And they've gotten you used to potentially using iTunes before to access all kinds of music and other things. So that, there have been two major contributors to the whole world of podcasting in terms of creating usership. One has been radio stations, which have become such a supplier of podcastable kind of information. The other, and it's partly radio stations, have been the various sources of music. And you'll see that in a minute with some of the other players that we're looking at. So if you get people started listening to music and they're used to using that particular form of getting it, then it's fairly easy if they've decided they like podcasts. If you're now making podcasts available in the same player or the same device, that's a natural transition. It's sort of like what we've seen happen with Target and Walmart, who have, in addition to making their normal goods and services available, they've put grocery stores in. So if you've got people shopping in a store already and they need food, they're potentially going to stay there a little longer, or they're going to go for food and pick up something else. It's sort of what has made Amazon such, a huge player, that you can get everything there. So, you're likely going to start there with your shopping, and you may not go anywhere else if you can get most of what you like. So Apple Podcast is the biggest. Spotify, which began as a music provider in Europe, is the second biggest. And interestingly enough, Spotify, and I'll show you what it looks like in a bit, but Spotify has a very young audience, and it has a very heavy European audience. So, they're the second biggest. And then down here are several of the others that are main players. So the ones that are in the squares are the ones I'm going to talk about. You're welcome to, to go back and look at any of the others if you like. Stitcher is one that I've started using lately, which I like, which has a number of features I'll talk about, and it's easy to use. iHeartRadio is, even though it's showed down here at a lower standing in the number of podcast players, it's actually one of the largest in use. And again, it's partly because it's a station, and it's partly because it began with music, and it's had a head start, and it's very deeply connected to Apple. So, all of those things have contributed to a lot of use there. Overcast is another one that is now heavily used by Apple listeners, and Pocket Cast. So we'll be talking about each of those, and I'll show you examples. So who's used some of these? And you want to tell us what you've used? Anybody? Barry, I know you're a big iHeartRadio user.
I use Anchor.
Anchor,
And Anchor in turn sends it out to all the others, or most of the others. So
yes, and so I'm gonna, let's see, do we have Anchor? We don't even have Anchor on this list. That's interesting. I read some reviews on Anchor, and what Bob was talking about is what they refer to as a podcatcher, an aggregator. So that's how podcasts get to all these different systems that are making them available to you, is that they scour the web, they create directories of various programs out there, and the big players get picked up automatically. The small players often have to contact those directories and say, hey, I've got a podcast, would you list it for me? So that, and then pretty much the same stuff shows up on each one of these different players, although the players may specialize in certain kinds of things, and they may make the kinds of things you're looking for easier or harder to find. So
Pulling most of the, excuse me, Carol, but pulling most of the podcasts off of Alexa seems to be basically from the Apple podcast, but it doesn't matter where it is, they'll go find it and play it.
And that's one of the benefits of the Apple podcasts, particularly, especially using Siri, but Alexa may work just the same, and it's part of what has made Apple so popular, is that you can request a particular podcast, and even more importantly, a particular episode, which is hard otherwise, and get it to play for you. And, that's part of what's been happening in terms of the growth of the industry, is it's not only phones and it's not only computers, it's speakers and watches. So, one of the things we'll talk about in a minute is how Apple has, and some of these podcasting systems have made it possible for you to actually play podcasts on your watch. So that's another big deal. Anybody else want to say anything about any of them that you've been using?
Carol, we should just mention that when you're interested in a podcast and you want to follow it, you subscribe to it. That's the term. You subscribe to it, and then you receive all the latest updates on that particular podcast. On Apple, I have my iHeartRadio on there, which is extremely active. It has every genre of music you can think of on there. You can subscribe or listen to it at will. And it has a whole bunch of radio stations across the nation that give you instant access to a variety of subjects and audio broadcasts. Podcasts can also be video, I should tell you. They're not only audio, but they're also video based. And proof of that is what you see in Apple. A lot of them that you see or can be searched for will also give you audio, video, or both.
That's interesting, Barry. So you can see that what Barry was saying is borne out borne out by this, the fact that the broadcast radio and podcasting is such a natural link. And, that's what's made NPR so popular. It's also what's made iHeartRadio so popular, is that people can listen to music. They can listen to radio stations all over the country, all over the world. And music has kind of driven that whole growth process. Now there's the opportunity for more and more of the audio interviews, commentary, talk shows, stories, all of the sorts of things that people now listen to. And I didn't realize that iHeartRadio or that Apple was also being able to do video. I know Spotify has added that, and it's one of the things that is contributing to their growth right now.
One of the things that I've found interesting is that you can request podcasts by topic rather than a specific podcast.
Yes.
I would like to hear the podcast on such and such a topic, and it will go find it, and they start listening to you, which I find terrific.
Yes, and here's a little more about radio stations. So TuneIn is another one like iHeartRadio. When I went looking to listen to NPR, and I asked my Amazon Fire to play it, it opened up TuneIn and played it. So it's kind of like Pandora, iHeartRadio, and other things. And it will give you, again, access to this broad range of kinds of programs. And this shows you what you can do if you're looking to use iHeartRadio. And so you can see some of the settings. I'll show you more in a bit. But you can see you can build your library, you can build playlists, which Barry is very, very good at. We may have him talk more about that another time. And you can specifically listen to podcasts. And I'll show you more about some of those choices. And like Don said, each of the players make available to you a listing of a whole host of kinds of topic areas that will give you lots of good options of things to listen to. Some do that more easily and in a more friendly way than others. So that may be part of your choice of how you pick a particular player. So Apple Podcasts, we talked a little bit about this. They've been a major player since 2005. Used to be part of iTunes, and then they rebranded it and made it a standalone product, and it's become increasingly popular. Taking it out from under iTunes, I think, was a real smart move on their part, given how hard iTunes can be for many people to use. And so here are some of the benefits of Apple's podcasts. You can see tons of shows, tons of episodes. You can get any of them for free. You can save your cellular data and listen anywhere. You can download things to your library. You can continue listening on your various devices and see the latest episodes in Listen Now. And you can get curated things from their editors and the most popular shows that appear in Browse. And you can more on getting updates and curation. In terms of the disadvantages, and again, this tends to come with any of the free levels of these applications. One is ads and when they are and how long they are. A lot of Apple users complain about this. There's also complaints about the fact that with Apple Podcasts, the sound quality may stutter, it may skip. So, that may be partly to do with your Wi-Fi connection, your speed, whether you're downloading. And when you open up the podcast, now this may have been corrected now, but the reviews I read said that you would see the downloads of the same shows each time opening up your viewing screen, which meant that you had to go searching more for the things that you actually wanted to listen to. But with each of these, I'd encourage you to look to see how you react to these different podcast players, and we'll look at the criteria for that in just a sec. So here's the Apple Podcast app. That's what it looks like on the phone. This is what you may see initially. You can pick Browse and see much more. Here's an example of some of the sorts of things you would see on your phone. And you can see how you've got the topic here. You've got the opportunity to look at featured or top charts, all categories, featured providers. You can play it. You can browse. You can add things to your library. When you go a little more deeply into searching for a particular show, you can see the particular episodes and you can add them. This is important, and one of the ways that podcasts vary or podcast players vary is how easy it is to search for episodes and how much information you find out about them. So this can give you additional details so that you can easily make the selection of what you want. And here's, if you pick one, what it looks like when you're actually playing it. You'll see that you can play it at regular speed, and then there's some options for increased speed. You can go back 15 seconds or forward 30 seconds. And again, that ability to go backwards and forwards is an important thing. Here's the iTunes way of accessing, and you can see all the different, it's set on podcasts. You can see a huge variety of kinds of things that you could explore if you wanted to. How many people out there still use iTunes? Anybody?
I do.
Do you use it for podcasts, for accessing podcasts?
Yes, in some cases.
Mm-hmm. Any particular reason?
It's just convenient. I'm just used to doing it that way. Okay. Since they took it, changed the iTunes. I've never had a problem with iTunes, but I liked it, the fact that it was conveniently there, and you can see which ones are video and which ones are audio, and of course adjust accordingly.
And again, the likelihood is you're doing this on your computer, so it's a good alternative, for that kind of use.
Absolutely.
Okay, and you can actually sync it to other devices, either from a PC or from a Mac.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm gonna walk through a number of criteria that you may want to use when you're trying to decide what kind of podcast to pick. So first one may be price, and virtually all of them have a free version. There are limitations, just like the different, like the, sorry, my mind stops every once in a while, like the malware protection or Netflix or HBO or any of the different streaming or software programs. You can often get a free version, which gives you some of the features, but not necessarily all of them. Or you can pay often in tiers for different kinds of services. And the range of what you pay is quite significant. So I'll show you some of the ranges. But one of the biggest things about price is that if it's free, you're going to probably be dealing with ads. And when they are, and how many of them there are, and whether you can skip them, and how annoying that is, or what kind of ads they are, may be part of your decision. Another one is how easy it is to sign up. And as far as I'm concerned, the less information you have to give in order to see what kind of a player it is and whether you like it is a big deal. So when I went to look at each of these, the hardest one was Spotify. They wanted all kinds of information before they'd give you any access to anything about what they would do. So, I figure they shouldn't need much from me. They're having you give them your email address and whatever else they ask because they want to be able to market to you, obviously. The next thing is search ease. So how easy is it for you to browse and find the things you want? Does it carry the programs or the interest areas that you have? And can you see those easily? If it's a music-oriented player and you don't care about music, can you get to the other kinds of podcasts that matter to you? And are they going to be the range of sorts of things that you want? Can you change the speed? And, you can, this is becoming a more and more important discriminator between players. So some of them will let you go forward 30 seconds, backward, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. So if you've missed something and you want to be able to catch up with what you missed, or you want to skip ahead of something you don't want to listen to, this is a big deal. Some of the players actually let you set the level of, of how much you change. Customize it. Can you listen on a computer as well as on the phone or tablet? Almost everything, all the players you can use on phones and tablets. Some of them also let you use computers. Others will charge you extra for that. Can you sync and pick up between devices? So, again, depending on whether you're doing this on a computer, whether you're doing it, depending on how you're doing it, you may or may not be able to. Apple is one of the best about letting you be able to sync and listen to something and then pick up, listen to part of the program, leave the house and pick it up on your phone just where you left it. Is it ad-free? Does it play music also and let you do one-stop shopping? Does it have few drops or stalls? How much bandwidth does it use? Some of them tend to take much more bandwidth than others. And does it notify you for new episodes? So, will Will it ping you? Will it send you an email? When you go into the player, will you see the new episodes at the top of what you're viewing? Does it give you curated content? And if so, do you like it? Does it give you exclusive content? This is one of the new areas. So I went looking to see whether Michelle Obama, who I knew had a new podcast, where it was being carried. And interestingly enough, it's exclusive content on Spotify. So just like we're seeing Netflix and Amazon and all kinds of people have their own exclusive content, we're probably going to see more and more of this. And can you share it? So some of the players will actually let you share in entire episodes. Some will let you actually take clips and share those. Okay.
Carol?
Yeah.
You can also download them and listen to them offline.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep. And we'll talk in a little bit about downloading versus streaming, which again is the same consideration that you make between whether you download Netflix or listen to it live. And there are pros and cons both ways. We're talking about much smaller files and much less time. So here's iHeartRadio, and here's what you see when you go in. Here's some of the major networks that they carry, and you can see there's potentially much more. This is the setting for podcasts, and here's a ton of the kinds of things that they show. And so some of the pros are tons of music, unlimited, thousands of radio stations and podcasts, and free, although they've got levels. And this may have changed now, but again, iHeartRadio has this huge partnership or relationship with Apple. And so what I was finding was that they were saying this was the only, that you could only listen offline on Apple devices. And here are some of the kinds of ways you can access. So you can see pretty broad. Here's what you see often when you come on. And again, you can see how there's a huge pull down menu here with all kinds of topics. Here's a lot of the sorts of things that are popular. So, and you can see when you've got shows like The Daily, that is a daily show, you can see how that contributes to their popularity because now people are listening every day. You can see that you've got stories that you can listen to, you've got interesting things. It's like, wow, I didn't know about that. And you can see some of the things that you've either already picked or they want to suggest to you. And it's nice and clean. And so this I'm actually going to skip over. So one of the other things is in terms of how you access what you've got potentially a library, and you can see what you played recently, what you've saved, particular podcasts, playlists that you created. So again, pretty easy, pretty clean. Anything you want to say, Barry, or anybody else who uses iHeart about why you like this?
Because it has a wide variety of things in every possible genre. So you have a tremendous spectrum of selections from which you can choose.
And then here are the upsells. So if you want even more, if you want to play any song, if you want to skip with unlimited times, if you want to save songs from the radio to your playlist, replay songs from the radio, then it's going to cost you $5 a month. If you want these additional features to listen offline, to get access to everything, to create unlimited playlists, it's going to cost you $10 a month. But there's no additional charge to listen to your favorite live stations or the all music radio stations. So again, you can see the heavy orientation to music. This is the next one. So I don't know whether any of you have heard about Overcast, but this is one of the up and coming ones. And again, it's one that works really, really well and exclusively on Apple. And here are some of the things that it provides. So this one lets you customize the amount of time, or the amount of time you can move forwards or backwards. It lets you boost the volume. So you know how sometimes you'll be listening and they'll have a speaker on whose voice kind of drops out or you can't hear as well. You can increase that easily. They let you stop and resume easily. Their playlists are particularly good to set up and use. You can actually use this to sync to your watch if you have an Apple Watch. And you can share links and clips. Has anybody used this? No. So if you're an Apple user, something you might want to check. The next one is Pocket Casts. And again, this is another favorite. And you can see here's what it starts with. One of the advantages of this is that it plays on various kinds of speakers. You can Chromecast it, and you can use it in the car using a CarPlay app or your normal way of using things in cars. Here's some of the sorts of things that it does, and these are all free. So you can use it cross-sync. You can use it on both Apple and Android. You can use it with CarPlay. You can trim silence. You can easily search for episodes. You can Chromecast or AirPlaycast it. The watch. So all of these things, you can play at variable playback speeds. So this one is the second one that's becoming very, very popular. So I'm going to stop for a second. Are there things that you all may have questions about or things you're wondering about with these?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the minimum level of iOS you need to be able to access any of these with an Apple product?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer. I don't know. Barry, do you have? I don't.
What do you mean by minimal level, Herb?
Well, right now, I mean, Apple's up to what,
13.
iOS 13 or 14?
13.
But a lot of the Apple devices don't go that far. And so I'm wondering, like how new or how old a device can you use to access these podcasts?
Well, it pretty much depends on the age of your device. Apple
Right.
is not supporting the really older devices anymore. That doesn't mean that you can't get these podcasts on them. You just can't get the advanced features that the operating system gets as it advances and matures.
Mm-hmm.
Does
Okay.
that answer your question?
Yep.
I
Okay.
think there may be an even better answer, but and I was going to see if I could get it on my phone, but I didn't have quite enough time. My guess is that you can use, phones that go fairly far back and do a lot of this. You may not be able to sync, you may not be able to, do some of the other things, but it's worth trying out or checking on.
Well,
Absolutely.
I do have an Apple phone SE, and that one seems to take all the Apple updates. It's the iPads that give me the problem. And
Probably the early iPad mini. Some of them Apple just stopped supporting with updates. So the latest you can get on those, and I have one of the older ones, is just, I believe it's iOS 9.1.3
Yeah,
or
right.
something like that. So you will not be able to update because the processor is too slow. It will be a very difficult experience for you. So as the iPhone SE had some of the best features and made it in a much smaller phone, which made it quite more powerful for its size than others that came out previously. That's why you're able to do very well with podcasts and Apple content and things like iHeartRadio. One of the ones that I use all the time is Kim Commando. I've subscribed to her for a long time as a Kim's Club member. She has the #1 syndicated podcast of its kind in the entire country. And you can subscribe to it. You pay a certain amount every year, and then you get access to the advanced features. But if you want to listen, for example, just to her show when it's recorded, I believe you can get it on iHeartRadio. You can just search for these sites and say, when is this, what stations carry it? You'll find a ton of stations that carry it across the country at various times when it will be broadcast, either live or taped. And that's one of the big advantages. And of course, the power inside the phone enables you to get the more advanced features and more diverse. I hope that answers your question.
thank you.
And I would say try it, and I'm going to try it when we're done too. I have an iPad 2, so which is pretty old. It only goes up to 9 point something. So
That's exactly what I have too.
yeah, yep. It and you probably won't be able to download, but you may well be able to stream it.
Okay.
And do you use any of the smart speakers? Do you have an Alexa or anything else?
No, I don't.
Okay. Any other questions? So I just want to show you, this is what Pocket Casts looks like. And again, so you can see this is, I would say, set up to appeal to a younger audience. That's what I always think when I see these black backgrounds, but that may just be, my perspective. And so when you go in, you see that you have the opportunity that this is focused on a particular program. You can see you can back up 10 seconds forward, 30 seconds. You can skip an episode. You can mark it as played. This is another big deal, is whether there's show notes and you can read them, as well as whether you can make notes. So some of the programs let you, others don't. And then you can share what you've seen. You can share the whole podcast, the episode. So that's a little bit about Pocket Casts. And it's much cheaper, 99 cents or $1 a month upgrade for the desktop version to be able to watch playback. And now I can't remember. Oh, this is playback on your watch. And it lets you upload up to 10 gigs of files with storage, which again is a different feature than you see in many of the other players. So, this is the things that I showed you earlier were all free. These are the upgrade features. So it's worth trying at the very least for free. This is Spotify, and this is what you see when you go on their website. and you can't get anywhere else without doing, you can't, there's no access to features. You basically have to go through the sign up process to actually be able to get anything further than that. And you can see they started out with songs. That's still been their feature, their main feature. And this is what, in the background, you can see the kinds of things that they play. And you can see, again, it's likely oriented to a younger user. And even though there's a fair American audience, there's a much larger European audience.
I think the term to use there is curated. Curated means that a group of one person or a group of people get together and they decide which songs most benefit the targeted audience and the genres that they benefit. So what they wind up is something called playlists, and those playlists contain songs keyed to your specific likes or dislikes in music or the genre. So for example, you might have a playlist for country music or classical or pop rock or whatever it is. And then since you wouldn't be selecting them, they make suggested selections, and Spotify is one of these once you get into it. So I hope that elucidates a little bit.
Thanks, Barry. So you can see some of the pros. You get access to a shitload of songs, and the playlists that Barry was talking about are easy to both search and make. And the cons, and this is one that people comment about a lot, is that the ads are very intrusive, that you can only shuffle the songs, that the sound quality on the free version is not as good, and that you can't download the song. So now, again, this is the free version. Here's when I went looking for Michelle Obama, and this is what I had signed up for it. So this is what it looks like when you go in to actually see something. So here's her podcast list, and you can see that you get a little bit of a description of what it is, and you can actually access a transcript in addition. You can play it, you can create a playlist around it, and you can like it or do whatever you want with it. So that's a little bit more on Spotify. The next one is Stitcher. This is one that I actually like, and again, I tend to go for clean and easy. So you can see that when you go into it, you have a choice of focusing on top shows. You can go in at whatever level you want. They'll show you initially what's the most favored ranking, and they'll give you the opportunity to go in right from the get-go to the kinds of topics, and they're mostly the same sorts of things we've seen before. That you want to check out. And so here's what you see when you see it on a phone. This is one that, if you set up favorites, you can get to your favorites easily. You can see your episodes list. You can see what you've downloaded. And when you're actually in getting ready to listen to something, you can set your timing for how quickly forward it takes you, starting with 5 seconds all the way up to 60 seconds. And you can do the same thing setting backwards. So that's another benefit. It's easy to search for episodes. You can sort the episodes, which is nice. You can cast it to speakers that you have. Like I just said, you can rewind, you can create playlists, you can swipe to eliminate downloads. So this is another biggie. We all deal with having more on our devices than we want, eating up our storage. So being able to get rid of stuff easily is a good thing. So you can actually, on your phone particularly, and I think probably on the computer also, you can simply swipe it. I don't know if it's left or right, whatever it is, and it disappears. And you can play it in car mode. So that's, whoops, Stitcher. So any questions so far? I'm curious, anybody see anything that they might want to explore?
Certainly iHeart should be on your top list. That's when you open it up, it says it is the #1 in the country.
Well, again, number one is relative, but
Right.
yeah, it's, so I'm curious, you asked for a presentation on podcasts. Has this told you stuff that, you know, is either interesting or useful to you? Anybody want to make any comments about it?
Make a comment. I think it's very interesting, and I need to learn a lot because I didn't even know that there was such a variety of podcasts. I listen to iHeartRadio, like I listen to French songs and singers, and my partner is totally different, so we can vary from French music to country music, okay, at any time. Also for the podcasts, which I've used in the past, but not thoroughly like you're describing, so I'm learning a lot, is like, you know, the Daily Mail or the New York Times, and even like individual health issues, like for mental health podcasts. So I think, yes, it's very interesting and learning as you're showing, because I didn't know that there was such a variety. So thank you. Appreciate that. All the information you're giving us.
You're very welcome.
Warned
Carol,
you, she knows her stuff.
Carol, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
First of all, thank you. I've enjoyed this a lot. I'm just becoming introduced to these. I've listened to the Daily, and that's the only podcast I've ever listened to. On the screen right now, you say that streaming allows you to play without the entire file being downloaded. So walking away in the middle of a streaming file saves you the amount of data you don't listen to. How do you go back and hear that then?
You don't. If you're streaming it, you're literally listening to it live. And so whatever you're hearing exists only in the time you're listening to it. Whereas,
Okay, so you're better off downloading it then so you can listen to the rest later, right?
well, again, it's, there are pros and cons. So downloading both takes time and it eats up storage. So you can, and some of the players, and I think it may be Overcast or podcasts, I think let you download a portion of it. So, that may be one option for you. But otherwise, if you really think you're going to listen to it later, then downloading may be a benefit. But the other thing is that many of the players, one of the things to look at is how long a player will keep a podcast available for you. So some you can add to a playlist or add to listen to later and go back and hear without having to download them. You've simply identified them or marked them so that you have access to them later.
Can't you pause the podcast and then come back and start it where you left off?
That's a good question. If you're streaming it, I'm not sure about that. It probably varies.
Many of them are not live, they're recorded.
Right.
And if they're recorded, then of course you can pause it. If they're live, you're just
can't.
out of luck, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's very likely, Bob, actually.
Because if you could record a live stream, then that's sort of looking at a copyright violation of some kind. That's a no-no. because that's somebody's property going on. If you're pulling it right off, then using it for whatever purpose without permission from the owner, that's a copyright violation right there.
Yeah, I'm not talking about live streaming. I'm talking about whenever you're listening to it, if you're listening to it at that time versus downloading to listen to later. Although you also can listen to it live. I mean, one of the things with podcasts is that most of them are after the fact. Other questions or comments?
Okay, let's move on.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so when I listen to my podcast, I like to take a walk. So I would put it on my cell phone, I guess, and try to take a walk. But as you said, part of my concern is all that stuff is going into my cell phone, and does it disappear later, or do I have to somehow find it and delete it to get it out of there later?
Well,
I guess it depends on which app you're using.
yeah, so if you're just listening, that's...
No, I would be downloading it because I don't want to use, I don't want to be using data for a half hour while I'm walking.
Ah, yeah, so that was the other thing. So that's this, which is the other side of it. So when you're streaming, you're using data because you're a live connection to whatever you're listening to. When you're downloading, you're using data for the time that it takes to download it, but then it's available afterwards. So it's a toss-up. But if you don't have Wi-Fi, if you don't have unlimited Wi-Fi, and if you want to use it for walking, then you probably are going to download, and then, as I said, with one of them, you can easily swipe it to get rid of it. Others may, others you go in and you just select delete and get rid of it.
Okay. All right. I guess I'll have to just spend some time looking at how to delete.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You'd ask. So on my cell phone, I have Podcast and Pocket Cast on my cell phone.
Great. Well, that's two to be able to play with.
And when I do use podcasts, I'm a health nut, so I'm always downloading health shows.
Cool.
Like Invite Health is a nice one to listen to if you like Invite Health.
There sure is a plethora of COVID-19 podcasts out there, audio and video.
Yes, tons of those. And I enjoy listening to those as well.
Anybody else have any favorites they want to share? Okay, Barry, back to you.
Okay, are you done?
Yep, I'm done.
Okay, well, Carol, I want to thank you very much for a highly informative and entertaining presentation. I learned to expect no less. Appreciate your support as my right hand. And folks, let's give her a virtual applause. Okay, you can unshare your screen now.
Thank you, Carol. That was great.
Here we go. Back to reality.
Hollywood Squares.
Yes.
Sorry, but I have to leave. Thank you, guys. Enjoyed it. See you next time.
Bye, Meg.
Okay, wonderful. Ron, can you hear me? Everybody unmute yourselves. I'm not sure what's going on there. Well, as I say, this is a wonderful opportunity to be with each other, to see that we're communicating so well, look very healthy. We hope, or we pray, that things will change as time goes by, but we will continue to do these podcasts on a regular basis. We've been doing 2 a month since June. I think this is our 7th. So let me see if I can share something here. If I can, I don't know yet. Okay. Do you all see this screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is the club site, and if you go down and you scroll down, this gives you the information. If you're wondering of what we've done, I'm sure Carol is going to post this above in case you missed it. Is that what you're going to do, Carol?
Yep.
Okay, so it'll be available there. And what she did today was an excellent segue to what Huey did last week on Audible audiobooks. They're not that far apart, but they're different uses. So you're encouraged to take advantage of both. I know a lot of you use audio parts. Now, here's the next one coming up at 1 o'clock on the 25th. Would be Rob Truman, who's a well-known presenter across the country. He's going to be doing all things Google. We're going to be selecting which Google things he'll do. Probably Google Drive is a big one. I'd say Google Maps, which has been completely revamped. Probably Google Docs, and maybe something else.
Google Photos.
Google Photos, yes, right. And the Zoom presentation, next one would be on October 9th. Bob's going to do it for us. You don't want to miss that because you know how good Bob is. And finally, on the 23rd, we're going to be doing John Kennedy is another well-known presenter. It's a long time since we've done this, but we should introduce you to Linux and how useful it is. These are the other dates we selected. Usually if you click on something, there'll be a description there. Sometimes there isn't, but we try to keep this updated. Now, the reason the next presentation is at 1 o'clock because people don't like getting up at about 6 or 7 in the morning. Bob is very gracious to do that, even with a cold today, and I thank you again. But when it was originally scheduled for 10 a.m., Rob is in Arizona. So that's a difficult time for him to get up and get moving. So he said, I said, well, I'm very easy today. How about 1 o'clock, which brings it back to 10 o'clock our time. So you want to make a note of these things on your calendar right now. You will be getting invitations about a week in advance to keep you informed. Now, I have something here under the trending now. Can you all see this, I hope?
Yes.
I have a new section called Notable Sites. And one thing I have just found is something called the Alzheimer's store, which I would like to show you. This is an amazing store for people who are suffering from Alzheimer's or know someone who is suffering from Alzheimer's. There is a multiple amount of gifts. Has anyone ever seen this before?
No.
Okay.
Yep.
But you can buy, as you can see, a list of things you can shop for by category. Bathroom safety is a big one. People are always slipping in the tub and whatever, especially when they're not aware of what they're doing or they have balance issues. You can ask an expert on it. There are many gift ideas, new products, things specific to COVID-19 and Alzheimer's, and tons of resources and links. For example, side by side, as part of a philanthropic community, the OWL store can help provide the best products to keep your loved ones safe, active, and loved. There are therapy dolls and pets you can get. Things for prevention, all types of medical devices, approved medical devices, games and activities, early stage things, middle stage things, and finally phones for memory. Here are the featured products at this time. A Wander Alert Alarm, an easy TV remote for seniors called Flipper, a photo phone with hands-free dialing, something they call a Twiddle Activity Muff Classic. Now the prices vary. Memory picture phone, amplified, a easy 35-piece tray puzzles and bird set, a daily clock reminder with assistance, a sensory weighted blanket for anxiety dementia. Now, some of these prices may be steep, but I'm sure if you could afford it, you'd want your loved ones to have the best. Let me see if I can get this video going. And Bob, once I started, do I have to enable a setting once it starts? Will it show up?
Just let it rip.
Okay.
It's Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and if you and your family have not yet been affected by this dreaded disease, chances are you could be. Joining me now is Brittany Barnett from thealzheimerstore.com, and the statistics are really scary.
They're frightening. Right now, 5.1 million Americans have Alzheimer's disease, and the number is only on the rise. Families are choosing to keep their loved ones at home due to both finances and a lack of facilities, and we call this aging in place. Mm-hmm. Our job at the Alzheimer's store is to relieve the caregiver of their daily stress while keeping the patient comfortable in their own environment. The Complete Guide to Alzheimer's Proofing Your Home is a Bible to the Alzheimer's industry. Mm-hmm. We have created a nationwide network of certified contractors to come to your home to talk with the patient about Alzheimer's proofing the home and making it a safer place for them to live. The first thing we'll do is go room by room over the necessary adjustments that need to be made.
I'm assuming that the first room that they're going to go to is the bathroom.
Yes, the bathroom is the most unsafe room in the house. We recommend installing grab bars, installing anti-scalding devices, and installing toilet overflow valves. Mm-hmm. We also recommend removing the mirrors.
Why?
Because of something known as stranger in the mirror. This is when later on in the disease, they don't recognize themselves anymore when they look into the mirror, and they get startled. And unfortunately, sometimes falls happen due to this.
Now, you're talking about safety, physical safety of the house, but what about the safety of the patient?
A lot of caregivers will tell you that wandering is the scariest thing. And what we need to do is alert the caregiver and halt the patient. And we have a lot of products here that I wish knew existed when my grandpa George had Alzheimer's. I know it would have put a lot of relief in our lives for my family. This stop sign right here, it's a simple stop sign. They remember this from growing up. They'll stop, they'll turn around right when they see it. We also have this bookshelf. It looks just like a bookshelf in a library, and they'll walk past it not realizing that this is a door right there.
And what if they do get out?
If they do get out, we have some more products. We have these GPS tracking shoes right here. Sometimes they're early enough in the disease where they can go for walks. Other times they do get out. We can track them on Google Maps with the installed chip in the shoe.
We've talked about safety. Now let's talk about comfort for both the patient and the caregiver. You've got a line of products for that.
Yes, 60% of caregivers suffer from caregiver burnout. And we would like to keep the caregiver and the patient both comfortable and content. And we have a line of products that do that. We have a baby doll. It's known as baby doll therapy. Alzheimer's patients lose their short-term memory first, and they retain their long childhood. They remember babies. Holding this baby in their arms keeps them comfortable. It keeps them soothed.
Mm. When we talk about Alzheimer's patients, I know one of the things that my mother used to do was ask these annoying questions like, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? What day is it? What day it is? And you've got a clock that handles that.
We do. We've done extensive research at the Alzheimer's store. This clock is #1 in my opinion. Most people don't know that Alzheimer's patients can't recognize digital writing. So this clock has a sweeping hand, and it has large enough font for them to be able to see the day, the date, and the month. So they're not going to constantly ask what time it is, and they're going to be comfortable knowing the day and the time and the date.
And then you have an easy way for them to get in touch.
Yes. When they can't get in touch with a loved one, they feel scared, and the first thing they want to do is be able to contact you. And we have a line of phones that will progress as the disease progresses, but eventually pictures will replace numbers, and they'll be using that as a way to contact you. They'll simply hit the picture of the person that they want to contact.
Boy, there's so much to think about when somebody in your family has Alzheimer's, and as more and more people are forced to stay in their own homes, these products are necessary.
Yes, they are.
All right, Brittany, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing, right?
Excellent.
And So I encourage you to contact them. There's the phone number, 1-800-752-3238, or you can send an email to contact@alstore.com. They are showing you a lot of links here that you can use. You can get your order status here. It's completely secure. If you have questions, go to the help or FAQ, frequently asked questions. You can review their policy for privacy, which is extremely important. I guarantee you that it's extremely private. They don't ask for any personal information or share it without your permission. It's also available on Facebook, Twitter. It's also available, of course, on subscribing to the healthcare products through the YouTube channel. Remember, this isn't pressure tactics. It's all there out for your decision. I just wanted to show you what's out there, and I hope you found that very interesting. Did you all find that interesting?
Very much so.
Yes. Good. So make a note of that, and that's what I wanted to show you before we end the meeting. Do you have any questions before I decide to end the meeting? All right. Well, it's been a pleasure to see all of you again. Please remember that every meeting link that we generate can be shared with other club members. Some of them were not able to attend today and let me know, but that doesn't mean that they won't be able to attend next time, and you can always share that meeting link with them. But for the time being, we're keeping it closed to members only. We may reconsider in October opening it to other groups, but right now we're trying to build our own, I guess you'd say, family. And you are DBCC family to me. Please feel free to contact me at my home number at any time. You know what it is. You can see it on the club site. You can see my email. If you need any support from me at any time, I'm a phone call or an email away. And I'm sure that goes for our other board of directors members too. Soon we're going to have...
I have a quick question.
Yes, Irv?
Yeah, how did you get yourself into this fancy TV frame?
This is something called video filters, and it's available if you look at your under your video options. You'll see something there that says choose virtual background or choose video filter. Now, you have to make sure that you've updated to the latest version of Zoom, which just recently went to 5.2.2 since we last met. And it has a lot of different features. It first introduced earlier the ability to use a virtual background. Now, if it's not showing on your screen on your device, you do not have the appropriate equipment or the power of the processor in order to make it happen. This is an old, as I say, our old Windows 7 machine. It's working fine, and you can see the option there to choose my virtual background, which sometimes works or not. I could be maybe here, but with the headphone, it looks like I'm separated from my head.
Not really.
Yeah.
It looks terrific.
There I am in San Francisco, the Golden Gate. Here I am back right here in sunny Florida. And if that bores you, you can go to video filters where you can start with your basic right there. Is that clear to everybody? And then you can go to, you can
pretty clear, yes.
There you can put yourself, I'm performing for you. Here, don't touch that dial, folks, you might kill me. And over here is a little picture frame. We can put yourself in a microwave. I can open my mouth and you can then make a dinner at the same time. And then here's a bunch of smileys. And they also have a lot of things like this. There you go. talk about blinders. We can turn me into a little hat. Give me a hat. Almost turn me into a slice of pizza there. There you go. There's a new one just came out where you are now showing that you're following all the guidelines of Dr. Fauci, the CDC, the WHO, whoever. And that's how I started some of the meetings, but the problem was unmuting myself, as you can see. Okay, so folks, it's been
Thanks, Barry. It's great.
I hope you like that Alzheimer's site, and please share it with everyone. It's an invaluable thing I just came across, and thank you all again for attending. I will be posting this recording soon after I get it to download, which will be a lot of time. There is also a chat that I can send you if you make sure that you let me know that you want it. I will be sending a follow-up email very shortly to every participant here, and it will include the link so they don't have to go directly up to YouTube to see it, where I now have a special playlist titled Zoom. And anything else that you'd like to say to me before we say not goodbye, but au revoir, as Lorraine would say?
Yeah, Barry,
Okay.
Barry,
Yes.
I wanted to add something also. So Irv, you can download the Apple iPad, you can download the podcast onto your iPad too. And I'll post a link to a video for doing that, as well as some other information probably about downloading other things in the in case you missed it section.
Carol's email is calling to Carol, calling, CALLING, the number 2, and then CAROL @gmail.com. If you want to send Carol an email, she'll send you any information that you would not have been able to obtain during this meeting. With that, it's been a pleasure. Stay well, stay safe, stay secure. Until next time, I'm out of here.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Barry. Great
Bye,
presentation.
everybody.
Thank you, Barry.
Bye-bye.
Bye.